Let me just adjust this. Let me grab my Zen really quick. Hold on.
Can't start without
My
that.
fiend side. No.
They gotta get that vitamin Z, man.
That's the 135 starter pack right there.
That's it. Everybody, welcome back to the Autopilot on podcast. We have a couple guests today. So John's back with us in his awesome podcast studio.
What's up, guys?
He's got headphones now. It's like every week he's getting better. We got Tom back. Welcome back,
Slowly
Tom.
but surely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
Hey, how's Alaska, dude?
Alaska's great. Right now we're just in our weird spring weather pattern, especially in South Central. Lots of wind, lots of rain. Keeps it exciting.
What's the
How many months
temperature
do you
up there?
actually have a summer there?
Oh, today
Yeah,
I think
same
it's
thing.
probably somewhere in the 50s.
Oh, I hate you.
Ouch.
That's great.
It's not bad, but yeah, we've been getting some massive low pressure systems coming off the Bering Sea and just pushing its way into Western Alaska and into South Central. So it's been making for some interesting weather. Some interesting flying conditions. Actually just got back from medical leave, and so just getting back into the seat again, which has been all good stuff. But now having to deal with the challenges that everybody's been seeing for the last couple weeks.
Nice, man. Yeah. Came in at the right
Yeah.
time. Cool. And
I
then
did.
our new guest, the infamous Spencer. Vince spoke very highly of this guy in his episode, so we had to have him on. So welcome aboard, Spencer.
Thanks.
Cool.
Looking forward to that.
So I figure we'll start off with Spencer can tell us about his background and when he started and where he's at now, that stuff, and then we can go from there.
So, do you guys want the short version or the longer version?
I want the long one.
long
Give me the
version.
long one, buddy.
Long-
So, I actually started flying when I was 11 in gliders. My parents, they thought that they were going to kind of hopefully get out of having a birthday with a bunch of 11-year-olds running around the house. So they were like, hey, you can have two options this year. You can either have a birthday party with all your friends, or you can go do this cool and special thing that we're going to surprise you with. And I was like, you know what? I've never had this option before, so I'm going to take the cool and special thing, which then it turned out to be a glider ride. As soon as I went out for that glider ride, I was hooked on it. All I wanted to do was hang out at the airport, just watch airplanes come and go watch gliders land and whatnot. And so over time, I kind of built up good relationships out at the airport. And the guy that owned the airport, we actually worked out kind of a deal where I would spend a day out there helping out around the airport, and in exchange, I would actually get a lesson because aviation is kind of expensive. It likes to drain your bank account pretty quickly. So that's how I ended up actually getting my glider license, was by doing that. And as I got closer to ending my high school time, people were asking me about what are you going to do once you graduate high school. I started thinking about it, and I decided that everyone keeps saying if you have a career that you like, you'll never work a day in your life. And I decided aviation was going to be that route for me. So I decided I was going to go to the University of Dubuque, and I did their 4-year program there. I came out with my multi-engine commercial instrument, came back to the Midwest, or to Wisconsin, and I towed gliders. Built up quite a bit of time over a season in the Pawnee. The guy that owned the airport, he asked me about what my plans were for the winter, and he gave me the swift kick in the butt to get my CFI. I was very determined not to get it. Everyone's like, I don't want to do that. That's the worst thing I can possibly do. Well, I ended up doing it. I caved. And honestly, it was one of the better decisions I made. So I did a bunch of, worked at a couple of flight schools in the area. Then did some contract flight instruction as well, independent stuff. And started flying skydivers around, towards the tail end of COVID. out at East Troy. That's the first time I really got to fly a turboprop consistently. Love flying the PAC 750. It's an awesome airplane.
Yeah, pack time's good.
Yeah, it's a great airplane. It's like a pickup truck stuck in first gear.
I got my first hour of turbine time in a pack.
So as winter came around, I was looking for other places to go fly it, and of course, Vince was down in Puerto Rico, and he needed some backup because they were driving him pretty hard. So flew the Caravan down there with Vince for a couple months, and then came back. They needed a pack pilot in Phoenix, so I went down to Phoenix for a little while to finish up the winter. And then one of my other friends, he told me that, hey, you're getting to the age where you need to start thinking about insurance because you can't just stay on your parents for that much longer. Got another swift kick in the butt and ended up applying for a 135 that's literally in my backyard. So been flying there for the last 3.5 years, currently as a captain in their Hawkers, and I also do operations as well for them.
Spencer, where did you live in Phoenix?
I stayed at the drop zone at Skydive Phoenix, so in Maricopa area.
I brought my wife there on our first like real date, Skydive Phoenix. So I had a buddy who worked there. Maybe you know him. Vince was his actual name. He was there maybe a year and a half ago. No, 3 years ago, probably. I can't remember his last name, but yeah, I know Skydive Phoenix, and it's a good operation. So you lived in one of the trailers out there?
I lived in the staff house.
Oh, so you were nice. You were in a better position then. I just heard the stories about what goes on out there and the trailers.
That's every drop zone.
Yeah, dude.
And it's all true.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
Gets
pilots
pretty
are
rowdy.
the divas of the group, so I mean, they got to take care of us.
Sure.
It's true. It's true. Sometimes we're the redheaded stepchildren, though, depending on which DZ you're at.
This is also very true.
Mm. Did you get your private in a tailwheel?
I did not. I got my tailwheel endorsement after getting my private. It was part of the coming back to tow gliders. One of the deals, for me to get that job, of course, I needed a tailwheel endorsement. So I went on and got that. Flew Piper Colt that was converted to a tailwheel all winter long to build up tailwheel time so I could be able to meet the insurance requirements to fly the Pawnee. Definitely learned a lot in that airplane. Very short coupled. So it's kind of like a crazy X. You have no idea what direction it's going to go sometimes.
It's like a tri-pacer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Y'all have flown such cool airplanes. I'm just like out here, Cessna, Piper, Seminole, and you guys are talking about all these things. I'm trying to look it up on my phone, and I'm like, what are they talking about? So it's really cool, man. I got a couple questions for you on your glider time. When you started with that stuff, can you explain the difference to our viewers and for me also? What is it like flying in a glider versus an airplane and the airmanship involved in kind of each way?
Well, the difference between the two, I mean, of course, the major part in between gliders and airplanes is just the fact that you don't have an out all the time.
Right.
For a glider, you have to know the amount of energy you have available, and you have to be comfortable with that. So it actually helped out a lot when I was learning to fly airplanes, was because, you get used to I have this much energy, this is what I can and can't do. And I honestly think that's probably why, when I got to jets, because, jets are more, you got to control the energy because some of them are pretty slippery and they just kind of keep floating, and you want to hit the touchdown zone every time. So you have to know how much energy you have and be able to control it. And it definitely kind of the cooler thing too with doing gliders first is when you have your first simulated engine out, you're just like, oh, well, I'm comfortable with this.
It's basically a glider at that point, right? A heavy glider.
Yeah, I had 3 engine failures so far, and they're all just kind of non-events.
Tell us about those.
Dang, man.
What were they in?
One was in an Arrow someone just bought. Yeah, they were like, yeah, I just purchased this Arrow. I wanted to learn how to fly in it. He's going from a 172 with a G1000 to an Arrow with a 6-pack and just AVOR.
Nice.
Oh, boy.
Nice. My favorite.
So day one, I was like, all right, when we take off, all we're literally going to do is just have you navigate with the VOR so you kind of get used to the feel of the plane, how much heavier it is, kind of get used to the speed of it, being able to change power settings, climbing and descending, the normal stuff to get comfortable with the plane. And I'm looking outside because I'm having him, of course, go from like different radials on a different VOR, and like, of course, occasionally throwing in the like scenario that he'll have one that's reverse sensing, so then he gets, all the fun. And I'm looking outside because he's just engulfed in what's going on inside the plane, and I hear him go, I'm like, oh, what's up? And he's just like, I think the engine died. And I was like, well, this is great. This is not how I wanted my Saturday to start. So, yeah, it was like my airplane. I ran through the flow to like try to restart the engine. Didn't work out. Thankfully, we're just right over the airport, so just came down. Again, energy management side of it. Did not put the gear down because we all know that the Aero likes to identify as a brick
Yes.
as soon as that gear comes down.
Very much so.
So yeah, we just landed uneventful. Come to find out that there was something in the fuel lines that prevented it from running.
Wow.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, the closest I've gotten to a engine out was when I was a CFI and a student was practicing an emergency descent, and they thought it was a good idea. No, it was an engine fire or something like that. So she was running the procedure, and she just cuts the mixture completely. And I'm like, whoa, let's not do that. She's a great girl, but now it just started right back up. But that's about all I got on engine failures, which I'm pretty thankful on. So
this is the
was that airplane
power off 180 and an Aero right here. Hey, damn, if you drop the brick and follow the brick. Sorry, John. Go ahead.
You're fine, dude. So it basically just it falls out of the sky like way more than other airplanes. Then you're saying like it just drops.
Yeah.
Interesting. Is that just aerodynamic wise of how the wing is? Is it a high wing or low wing airplane?
I think it's more of just a Piper thing because like the Aero is literally an
Piper
Archer.
Aero, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Like all Aero or an Aero is they're just like you look at an Archer. Piper is just like, oh, let's lop the gear off and make it that the gear can go up and down.
Gotcha.
And they add 300 extra pounds to the plane. Now it has a very unaerodynamic capability or ability of itself because
so it's basically an Archer that is a complex airplane with the gear that can come up.
Yeah, it's an Archer that identifies as a complex airplane. Yeah,
barely. Yeah, I have about 1,000 hours in the Archer, so it's just that equivalent. I just haven't heard of an Aero before. Like my planes are limited to like all commercial aviation and like 3 airplanes outside of that. I'll say, oh, that's a Gulfstream on every single one of a private or corporate jet. I have no idea.
Gulfstream
what
with 8 seats. Yes.
Yeah. Like from my previous episodes, I don't know about that part of the industry and GA in general. So I know when Tom was saying he's flown all these different airplanes, I'm like, I have no idea what these are, but I'm super stoked that you're telling me about it.
Well, if you want to see a really interesting airplane that I fly regularly, it's a CJ6 Nanchang.
Okay, what is that?
What is that?
I'm pulling it up. Stand by, gentlemen. Oh, I thought this was a Yak. Okay.
What is this? Is it a Korean airplane or something? A Yangjang?
Yeah, I got a picture. Stand by. It's coming up.
Wow.
How did you get time in that, dude?
The guy that owns the airport back home, he has it, and he just wanted to exercise more.
Is it a Chinese airplane or like? What is that a China flag? No.
It's a mainland Chinese airplane.
Okay, so I'm not too far off.
Yeah, the before it came to the U.S. and they do all their like modifications to it, it only has an hour and a half worth of range because they didn't want their people in the military to be able to defect.
Holy smokes!
Yeah,
that's incredible. For you. Wow,
it's a weird airplane,
so
but
like they would do that on purpose to an airplane, like.
Yeah,
was that really the reason, or is that just like a?
It's basically a Yak 52.
Yeah.
which is the
Oh, okay.
Chinese
So it is
knockoff
okay.
version.
Cool. Yeah.
Well,
Nice.
never say that to a Nanchang owner that it's pretty much a yak. It's
Fighting words.
according to Wikipedia, it's an original design of the Chinese.
Yeah. What's the C12 or whatever the Chinese are designing right now?
Yeah.
Oh.
Don't get me started about that stuff, man. They knock off everything.
IP, baby.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
Wait until you see it on Temu.
There you
Yeah.
It's the Temu Yak. That's what we're gonna call it now.
Yeah, it's definitely
you
the
go.
Timu Yak.
Holy $5.
It's $1,000 for shipping.
It's good for one flight.
Oh, wow.
Dude, what else have you flown? If you've flown that kind of Nanchang machine, what else have you flown? Dude?
I mean, I think the last time I counted, it was almost 30 different airplanes.
Nice.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Good. Those are good numbers.
How do you get that many chances to go fly these airplanes? Do you just sit at the airport and say, "I want to fly in your airplane"? Like, how does that happen?
Yeah,
That's
pretty
basically
much.
it.
Yeah.
Just hang out at the airport.
Yeah.
It's the one place where dudes can just go stock and just chill there and not have anyone
Hangar
say
fly.
you're a stalker. Like,
That's it.
yeah.
Like, I got into a Yak 52. It's a TD, so it wasn't originally a tail wheel. It got converted to a tail wheel. So it still had the pneumatic brakes and some of the weird characteristics that the Yaks have. I got into that airplane because I was landing the pack at East Troy, and I was like, I saw him taxiing across, and I was like, "Hey, is that a Yak?" And he comes on the radio. He's like, "Ah, it is." I was like, "Oh, cool! I fly the Chinese knockoff of it." And he starts laughing.
Did you know what you were talking about?
But yeah, he knew right away. He was like, "Oh, you fly a Nanchang?"
Nanchang. Dude, that's my favorite name for an airplane now, man. I love that.
Well, he's like, I did 4 more flights, and I come back after he fueled, and he's just like, he gets on the radio. He's like, "Hey, what's your number? We got to hang out sometime."
That's awesome. That's exactly how that happens.
That's a good phone
That's
number.
Yeah,
so
so then
cool.
now we've been
Yeah.
great friends ever since.
That's
Wow.
awesome. See, people, this is networking.
That's it.
We hear news stories every week, and it's like, this is how people land jobs. This is how people get time in 30 different airplanes. So that's such an interesting part that I'm really glad you shared all that, because I never got those experiences. So I love hearing from everyone else on all these cool adventures they went on with all these different airplanes. Because I think I could have went my entire life and never heard the word Nanchang before. I'm not kidding. So I'm super glad I learned about that. I'm going to start looking at that more.
John's going to be podcasting from a Nanchang cockpit next week, everyone.
Dude, I'm not even kidding you. I might have to. ChatGPT will put me into an Nanchang.
You know a guy who flies one. You're talking to him right now, okay?
How do I spell it? I'm going to try to use it right now. You guys continue talking. How do I spell Nanchang? I'll see if I can change it.
Just put in like CJ6A.
CJ6A. Okay, got it.
Yeah, you just put
Nanchang.
CJ6.
Keep talking.
Jeep
I'm going
will
to go with
show
my
up.
magic.
He's gonna change his background to a cockpit of a Nanchang. All of a sudden, he's gonna tie a Chinese bandana to his head. Oh, that's great.
The flight suit that I wear, the guy that owns it, he gave, like, when I got checked out to fly, he's like, "Hey, part of the agreement, if you're gonna fly this, you need to wear a flight suit, just because it's a military, like, it was a military airplane." And then, so he gave me a flight suit and then a patch that said Red Star Pilots, and so, like, I have the Red Star Pilot patch on there too.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
You should be doing this podcast in that flight suit.
You know,
Is that equivalent to like flight instructors wearing the epaulets?
pretty much.
And I say that as a guy who wore the epaulets because I had to.
Oh.
Oh, that's great. Tom, what's the craziest airplane you've flown?
Ooh, man, that's a good question. The craziest airplane I've flown. Like, how are we quantifying crazy?
I mean, coolest, wildest, unusual. I don't know.
Tom,
Probably
you get some good ones
probably
too.
the Saab 2000. I'd have to say.
Okay, yeah.
Where did
Yeah.
you fly the Saab at?
I was flying the Saab out of Anchorage, and we were taking it out out on the Aleutian chain, places like Dutch Harbor, at Sandpoint, Cold Bay, places where airplanes probably shouldn't go, but they do anyways.
Nice.
Man, I wish I had taken that job for a little bit, but they just
Dude,
didn't want to pay enough.
you would have loved it. You
I
getting
probably
into
would have
that
never
airplane.
left. Nope. He's still out there right now in Cold Bay.
Yeah. Yeah, they actually apparently they just bought another couple airplanes and they're growing, which is cool, which is great to see. Um,
Cool. Yeah.
but yeah, it's I don't know, like every, as you know, airlines in Alaska, they all kind of have a ticking clock to a degree
Hmm.
as to the
Why is
viability.
that? Is
I,
that
I
just
think it's a
erosion and stuff?
well, I think it's a money thing, honestly, a
Gotcha.
management thing. I mean, there's airlines that have been here for a long time, but then there's always kind of this rotating mass of airlines that try to do something, but then can't quite make it work for one reason or another. It's just a
Gotcha.
kind of a common thing up here. Spencer, I'm curious, where's the Hawker taking you?
It's taking me pretty far. Our company will take the Hawker anywhere in North America, Central America, and the Caribbean.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So like,
Is it just like corporate for a business then, or is it personal? Like, what kind of operations do you guys do?
It's a 135.
Okay.
Our company only owns like 2 of the Hawkers out of the 14 that we actually have. The all the others are owned by an owner, so we still do like 91 legs with the owners, but when the owners aren't using it, we're using them for charter.
Nice.
Gotcha.
I mean,
Oh,
working
something's
on it.
happening over there.
It's coming. It's coming. Bear with me.
No, it's gonna be facing forward in it now.
Mute myself really quick. So you guys continue talking, and I
Okay.
will.
Do you have to do a lot of the flight planning when you're doing the Hawker work, or does the company kind of do that type of stuff for you? Or I guess how in depth are you when it comes to making those decisions?
So the captains, like we do all the flight planning. We also are kind of in charge of costs as well. So we have different like quotes that we have to follow. So either a hard quote or actual quote. One's pretty much just we worry solely about the cheapest fuel, and that's
Yeah.
what we plan for.
Yeah.
Or we start taking into account like, okay, there's a min amount of, or we have to take like 310 gallons to waive the whatever fee. And then we have to figure out, is it actually worthwhile for us to tanker fuel to another location and just pay the fee outright, or just continue or go there, buy the min fuel, and then continue on from there?
Wow. Dang.
Well, yeah,
Scott, did
Tom,
you have to do that as
you
well
never
when you
had to
were?
worry about. Yeah, when I flew 135, well, I mean, not in Alaska because everything was out and back through the same airport. But yeah, like this is 135. You got to do all the flight planning, fuel planning, load
Yep.
planning. If you pay attention to your releases at the airline, I mean, at our airline, they put like a note in the remarks like you're tankering fuel because it's cheaper here, and then we can see the
Yeah.
prices based on the airport in a release.
Okay.
You know, you can look and be like, oh, okay, yeah, they're trying to save, 50 cents a gallon, which,
It
when
makes
you're
a
putting
difference.
2,000
Yeah.
gallons on board, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, that is a lot of money.
Boys, how does it look? Is this pretty
Yeah,
close to what it
that's
actually
very
is?
Chinesey.
That is excellent.
Will my employer care that I am respecting the Nanchang? Okay, so I don't even know if this is accurate. It's even got the Chinese stuff right here too. It's not even in English, so this is
Yeah, the panel. Hey,
people-
Spencer, is your panel all in Chinese?
There's some things that are in Chinese. There's some stuff that was Americanized, like the airspeed and altimeter, but pretty much everything else is still Chinese.
That's
Okay.
so crazy. So, like, if you got like your private pilot, do you think a DPE would actually certify you? Like, would he be? Do they just hop in that airplane and like, you know what I mean? Because if they can't read Chinese, how are they supposed to do that? I just thought about that. I have no idea if you actually know.
Well, like the guy that owns it, he ended up buying that airplane for doing his commercial check ride in.
Wow. Okay.
Crazy.
Yeah, he needed something that was complex, so he was just going to
There
do
you
it
go.
in that airplane.
Nice.
Nothing says you can't. I mean, you can get your multi-engine private in a King Air.
Yeah,
We're back to work safe now. We got the blue sky. The whole episode doesn't need to be with the Chinese flag in the back. Well, should we talk about our thunderstorms and all the crazy stuff we've went through in the last week?
Yeah.
This
I
is.
want to hear all
Scott,
about
have I
it.
been? You want to start or should I?
Go ahead, John.
Okay. So I am based at the Atlanta airport, and I have not done any East Coast flying really because I was at a regional that did all West Coast. So I'm used to maybe a couple thunderstorms to go through over New Mexico, something like that. Not a big deal to get to El Paso or something like that. Never really an issue. This year, I swear to God, I have not landed an airplane with less than like 15 to 20 knots of gusting wind. And then on top of that, with thunderstorms and edicts and just craziness. So this last trip, I was telling Scott, I was just like, man, I don't know if this is the right place for me at this point, just because it was a matter of so many things every single leg. It was supposed to be the easiest trip I did in a long time. It was one leg from Atlanta to Philadelphia. That was at 9:50 p.m. So I got a whole day at home. Everything's great. And then one leg from Philadelphia to Miami. And then we come back from Miami to Atlanta and then do an Oklahoma City turn. So the first leg we get there, plane arrives from LAX, brand new airplane. The airplane's a month old, literally, delivered at the end of March of 25. So literally a month old airplane or 2 months
It's
old.
got that new airplane smell.
You could still, and you could feel like the keys on the MCDU and all that kind of stuff were still like tactile.
Wow.
Because the oils haven't broken it down or anything like that. Anyways,
it's probably dirty.
Captain
still,
walks off. Yeah. Oh, it was. I was surprised. I looked for there's M&Ms on the floor, and I was just like, "Come on, boys." So, anyways, Captain walks out of the jet bridge. Says, "We're like all good airplane," and he's like, "Nope." There was actually a fume event that happened. So the flight attendant smelled some kind of burnt rubber / burnt oil. So he writes it up, and later we find out he wrote it up in the book. Didn't want to call it into maintenance. So that was great. But anyways, I digress. So we didn't know that right away.
Yeah, Tom, captains get lazy. Don't be that guy.
Yeah, try not to be that guy.
I'm learning all these small little things that I want to do differently as a captain from the stuff I'm seeing on the line. But anyways, maintenance comes out. They were like, hey, we have to do a engine run up to see what's going on. Do the run up. They don't smell anything. They're like, cool. We think we can get you back in service to go. And it's already probably an hour after our departure time. Come to find out, they need to do a borescope of each engine. I didn't know what a borescope was. So a borescope is where they stick a camera inside of the engines to look for leaks and all those things. Mind you, this is a brand new A321neo, like a month and a half old. And I'm like, man, that sucks. So they have to plane swap us to something else. Luckily, they did find something, but now instead of a 9:50 a.m. departure time, it was a 1:30 a.m. departure time. And instead of a 17-hour overnight, now we're going to be min-rested. Long story short, we get the new airplane, get to Philly, and we're going to be past our minimum rest period. So we sit in the lobby for 45 minutes waiting for someone to answer the phone to try to argue with them. Not argue, but to explain, hey, we need more rest. We need the 10 hours. We finally get that, go to bed at 5 a.m. What should have been going to bed at midnight and have 17 hours off turned into just horrible, and it set the tone for the rest of the trip. Next time we get min-rested, barely min-rest, get to the airport, find out that there's weather over Miami, huge cell that came over last week. We're delayed 4 hours. So when they could have just sat us in the hotel longer, they wanted us to come to the airport and sit there.
Frustrating, yeah.
So Tom, we talked about fatigue a lot on your episode, and me and the captain were talking, being like, hey, like, I know we're not doing anything, but we also are off a weird circadian rhythm, coming off barely any sleep. Now we're sitting here for 4 hours going into monsoon thunderstorms into Miami. So anyways, we go in, it was fine. And then I don't know if you guys have landed in Miami, but there's parallel runways, 8 left and 8 right, going eastbound, of course. So the UPS and FedEx guys have all their operations to the left of 8 left. So the in between both runways, they were holding short of 8 right. So everything, it was zero wind. It was just super rainy. Get to about 30 feet, and all of a sudden, we caught their wake turbulence from a 777, and I'm the one flying, and I'm like, this is not good. So anyways, was able to stabilize it, but like, I was just like, come on, man. I've never had that experience before. And they must have been powering up during when we were coming across. So I don't know if that was an ATC issue or what. I don't know, because I mean, it was pretty intense. Like, I haven't felt that before, other than in San Francisco having the wake turbulence blow off a 777 of
Mm.
one of United's planes when it was
How'd that
wind
happen?
calm. And we had to do a go
Yeah.
around on that because
Yep.
it was full deflection on the airlines. We couldn't maintain center line.
Cool.
Anyways, get there, and Miami min rested again. And we're like, dang, this sucks. And keep in mind, I was starting to feel like I'm under the weather at that point. Halfway from Philly to Miami, I could feel my like sinuses start to get kind of like clogged, and then
Mhm.
also like fatigued, not fatigued, but like worn down, if that makes sense. And I was like, and I took a couple vitamin C's or whatever they are, the packets you can take. And I was like, I'm just going to try to get through this. And I told the captain when I got there, I'm like, man, I'm just letting you know, I might not be here tomorrow. I might just call in sick or whatever, because this could go one of two ways if I don't get rested. Anyways, the last day, Miami to Atlanta flight, fine. Oklahoma, coming out of there, something about flight attendants with changing passengers last second when we're trying to run numbers. We were already delayed an hour based upon not having catering and water, the basic stuff. That's a different subject. But anyways, getting out of Oklahoma City, so we're really close to being at our lowest fuel we can to take off. SkyWest goes up, gets on the runway, and we notice a cell coming over the runway. It's at the end of the runway. They sit there for about 3 minutes, decide, no, we're not going to go. And the ERJ 175, I flew that airplane. The radar is not, I don't know, Tom, you fly that airplane. It's not amazing. It's pretty good.
It's pretty good, yeah.
Compared to an Airbus one, I'll tell you that I'm not going to say it's not even close, but the Airbus one is significantly better, where we can paint a lot more high resolution than the ERJ could. So anyways, they decide not to go because, again, they're a lot smaller than us too. And so we get to the end of the runway and we're like, all right, well, let's take a look. We see a pocket in between two large cells, and it's painting nothing. All right, so we're like, all right, let's go. Let's do it. And so anyways, right when we put the thrust levers of toga, captain gets a tornado warning on his phone. So imagine like you hit toga, right? Boom. And then the emergency services thing goes off. Yep. And we're like, so I don't know. His phone, I think, was in airplane mode. I don't know how it went off, but something went off. And anyways, we go, and maybe 10 seconds later, it goes from like perfect visibility to dropping to zero.
Wow.
So and the thing is, when you were on the end of the runway, it didn't look like that. It looked perfectly fine. And then all of a sudden it just went to zero. Or not to zero. I mean, like maybe 2,500 RVR at the most. And then, and then we're about 5 knots away from V1. And then tower reports positive and positive minus 20 knots on wind shear. Like, they just had all this stuff happen right as we were going. It was fine before that. So it was just wrong timing, right? Ended up being fine. We already did a toga takeoff out of there and cleaned up, and we just hit some heavy rain getting out of there. No hail, nothing like that. But I was like, man, like every single leg that I've had to deal with this trip was something different. And by that point, we were just like, go ahead.
Did you start off the trip by saying what could go wrong?
Yeah, I told the guy as we got on the flight deck, I told him, I said, hey man, the last 2 weeks have been bad luck for me. And I was like, I might just be a bad luck charm. I'm letting you know. And he laughed, didn't realize. And then we parked at the end of the trip, and he's like, maybe you are a bad luck charm. Because he's like, that was the hardest I've had to work. And he's like, everything around us went wrong. We didn't do anything wrong. Everything around us happened. And so, I don't know, man. This East Coast stuff is very different than flying to San Francisco and Seattle and all those areas. There's so much more work. But I feel like I'm definitely becoming way better in my craft of picking through thunderstorms, really high wind landings as well, and just learning the airplane to a higher extent. So when I am ready for upgrade, I have those capabilities to actually go out and be successful. So that has been my time. And anyways, like, it's just been a lot. So I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say about what's going on for your summers so far, or spring/summer.
Um, I'll go next. I've had similar experiences. This last week, I had to call fatigue on a trip in the middle of it. Just the East Coast, I've been flying. Normally, I fly out west, but I've been flying East Coast the last 5-6 weeks, and it's been catching up with me. Definitely, probably some chronic fatigue going on with it. But I was this last trip, we ended up flew a red eye into was it a red eye into Philly? We had a red eye into Philly one night. I think we did a Miami turn the next day, and it was so we're basically running on min rest now, and we're doing a Miami turn, and it's just Florida was a disaster with the storms. It was moderate turbulence pretty much the whole way down to Miami. We just couldn't find any smooth air anywhere, and we get down there, and on the way back, it actually wasn't as bad. We had to pick our way through some stuff, but the ride was a little better. It was more just a constant light chop thing. And then going back into Philly, we shoot an approach basically to minimums because the weather's over Philly. And I remember the whole way back, we're pulling the ATISes, watching the pressure drop. And when we left Philly on the way out, it's like 2.9 or 8.3. By the time we got back, it was 2.9 or 3.8. And that was
Wow.
like 3 hours later, dude. Like 3 hours.
Wow.
It was crazy. It was a strong system. And so, I thought we were going to end up having to hold on the way up there or something because they were shooting minimum approaches for an hour or two. And so we vector in on final. Luckily, it wasn't windy. It was just low ceilings. And we ended up breaking out a couple 100 feet above minimums. But it was raining, landed. Then we get to the hotel. So we get there. We're running late because we had delays starting the day off. And it's like 1 o'clock in the morning when we get back. And then we get there, and then the van's not there because we're delayed. So we had to wait 45 minutes for the van to show up. So now we don't get to the hotel till like almost 3 in the morning. And then
That's so frustrating.
oh, dude, and it's like it was supposed to be like, like a 16-hour overnight. And you're like, oh, great. Now it's like down to 12. But, it's 12. I can get a full night's rest, hit the gym the next day. Well, the problem is we just flown a red eye the night before. So you can't just pop to sleep when you get in, right?
Mhm.
So,
Right.
and I'm more of a red eye guy anyways. And so I don't get to sleep till 4-ish local time, or at least that's when I lay down. And then it was like 5 or 6 in the morning. I sleep with earplugs every time. I hear like a popping noise that wakes me up. It sounded like a click or a pop. And I'm like, what the heck? I thought, oh, it was just the AC kicking off or on or something, right? And I'm sleeping light. Go back to sleep. Hour or so goes by, hear it again. And then it starts like, try to go back to sleep. Gets progressively worse over the next few hours. And to a point where it was like I wear a sleep tracker. And I ended up with like under 4 hours of sleep. And I woke up and I'm like,
Oof.
there's no way. I'm supposed to go back to Miami today. I'm not, nope. And I was just wrecked.
Yep.
And then at 10 a.m., the housekeepers tried to walk into my room. I don't know how they did it. I'd set the deadbolt and the little flip up door stopper. They somehow overrode the deadbolt. And then the door stopper caught them. And when I finally got out of bed, I'd heard it, but I thought, oh, might have been the next door room. When I got up, they had left the door ajar. They didn't even fully close it. So
That's
I got up and looked, and I'm like, why is
ridiculous.
my door open? Like, it was crazy. So anyways, I ended up, calling fatigue, and it was rough. And then they ended up reconnecting me to the trip the next day, which was only one leg to Atlanta. And then I deadheaded home, which is cool because it was the first time I got to ride up front in a 7.5. And the crew was really cool. It was Delta, and the guy in the right seat was the number one FO at Delta, and he was number like 83.
Isn't that crazy?
83 in the company, dude. It was
That's
They got
crazy.
amazing.
17,000
He retires
pilots
next
over there.
month. I was like, dude, gave him my
What are
card.
the
I'm like, hey,
odds?
call me. I want to have you on. So hopefully he's on a future episode.
That's awesome.
That would be so cool.
It was cool listening to the stories, like from, because he started in 1990, like back when it was old school CRM, so like
Right.
he had some really interesting stories to tell. But anyways, getting back to the point, it's just been this spring has been rough, especially back east. And chronic fatigue's a real thing, and burnout's a real thing. I know Tom touched on this, which is why I'm glad he's back on for this episode, because you can give your perspective on it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, as far as like recently, you guys have kind of taken the cake as far as fatigue and flying, since of my little bit of leave, but some of my other uh, flying experiences, the 1900, that's kind of the one that really sticks out, just because it's a day-to-day grind at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I mean that's for 5 or 6 days straight, having to do that, put up with the weather, can fly, unload, load, flight plan, de-ice. It's just an absolute monster of a task. Yeah, it's all these weird little things. Just the rest alone, even if you can't get to sleep, or those times where you're in those hotels and you're like, I need to get to bed, I need to get to bed, and that's just all on your mind, and then that's actually just works completely against you when you're so concerned about getting sleep, and you just look at the clock and it's like, this isn't going to work, and it's so hard to overcome that particular thing. I don't know how often you have to battle that, but I remember when I was first getting into this part of aviation, it was always just a constant worry of, am I going to get enough sleep? Which I've gotten a lot better
I've
at it
felt
now,
that a
but
lot.
yeah.
I used to fly at the regional. It was a lot worse because we would usually have like a 10 and a half hour, maybe 11 hour, but most of the
Mhm.
time it was like right at min rest.
Yeah,
And so it was a lot more like it would be 4 legs a day for a 4 day trip. So it was 16 legs with a 3 hour sit on the last leg before going to your outstation.
right.
So you'd feel that a lot more. I think the operator Scott and I are at, I don't really get min rested a lot unless things break down.
Sure.
It's usually like 14, 16, 17 hours, something like that. So it's been really nice. And the places they put us are so much nicer too than what I was used to. And the sleep in Bismarck or whatever that we were at before. So I just want to touch on one thing of what Scott said about chronic fatigue. Back when I was doing the commute from Phoenix to Minneapolis and doing East Coast stay and starts, I started to get to chronic fatigue, and I didn't realize it until later on, until I was out of it. But I remember I
So,
went to a wedding for my wife's brother, and it was in DC, and I remember just feeling like 30% energy.
mm,
And I was like, something's got to give. Like, I can't do this forever because I literally could not. Like, they went and did things. I was like, I need to stay at home. Like, and so it doesn't just get a good night of sleep, it fixes it. It took me a month of being on reserve, not getting cold, to get back to normal, where I felt like a normal person again. So I think that a lot of aviators struggle with that because you're changing so many time zones and you work hard. And it's something I kind of have a love hate relationship with flying in that sense. Like our employers, the airlines, they push us hard. And especially if you just fly your schedule, it can actually end up being a lot worse than what it is on paper. And I think we, as aviators, like we talked about in your episode, Tom, we want to complete the mission.
yeah, exactly.
But like, and we're not afraid to call fatigue or anything, but how many fatigue calls are warranted to get a chief pilot calling you at the end of the summer?
Right.
And so I like that's a real thing. I don't know what the answer is. Who knows how many it takes, but point is you got to know your body. And also I think most aviators are not in it to trick the system. We're in it because we're physically exhausted and
Hmm.
the job is demanding and we have 240 lives behind us sometimes.
Yeah.
And that is not safe. I'll step off the soapbox, but I am learning very quickly that I do have limits and I'm not going to be afraid to exercise them if it means safety is compromised. And I think the captains are along with that too, because if you're both in agreement in that sense, then especially because we fly to so many of our own bases that if we are in between nights, they can easily fill that trip with a new crew and not
Hmm.
cause really any expense. So that's my opinion about everything, I guess, with chronic fatigue.
I feel like the 121 world is definitely a bit easier to make the fatigue call. I mean, not that it's an easy call to make, period. Um, for whatever reason. I mean, it also could be company culture too. Like when I was doing the 135 stuff, there was just we were all the whole pilot group was just in it together all at the same time, and so we it was hard for all of us to recognize what chronic fatigue looked like until it was slapping you in the face.
Spencer, what's your opinion on it and your perspective and where you work with everything like that? Because I know your rest rules are a little bit different.
Yeah.
Are you guys doing multiple legs a day, or is it usually just one and done?
Usually for us, it's a good mix. So sometimes you could have the most I've seen on our schedule for one crew to do in a day for legs, 6.
Wow.
Whoa.
How many hours or block is that per leg, do you think?
It honestly depends. Some of the clients, they request a max duty day. So
Okay.
sometimes I would even require us pre-positioning to their airport that they want to depart out of the day prior so that the crew is fully available for them that morning.
Gotcha.
And like for me, I've had one time where like I look back and honestly like I thought like I really should have called in fatigue because we had a day with maintenance issue after maintenance issue after maintenance issue, ended up diverting back home with passengers on board so that we could get a new plane to continue on the trip. And so we, when we finally got like all said and done at the end of the day, it was a very long duty day with a min rest. And then the broker that we were doing the trip for, it was, oh, well, you guys are now delaying the trips the next day, so we need you to do quick turns all day long.
Yes.
Which we pulled it off. We did it. Me and the first officer, we talked about it and made sure that we were both comfortable with the situation that we were in. And we continued on, and the next day I had an airline flight to go grab one of our other planes that we left somewhere. And I remember drinking 2 large cups of coffee within about 3 hours of each other. I fell asleep during the pushback, and I did not wake up until we were pulling into the gate.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah, I was just out, and I was like, wow, I was tired. We probably should have called fatigue after the day that we had all those maintenance issues back to back to back. So
I think the FAA should regulate airlines to do a full day of fatigue awareness in training. And I think it would be really beneficial because the general public does not have a good understanding of how much we work or do all these. I know Part 117 is designed for getting us the required rest and time off, but I also think it's a skill you need to learn in order to benefit the general public of safety. And if both crew members are trying to complete a mission, it's hard for one another to identify when that limit is and speak up and say something because maybe someone needs to get home, for example, and all those things like the hazardous attitudes back like to primary flight training. Like I can't even remember all of them, macho, but like get their itis is a serious one of we're about to time out and do all those things. And when we were holding short in Oklahoma, we would have had to go back to go get fuel. It was going to be an hour and a half until we could get out of there again. And we would have timed out into my day off and into his day off. So we thought about it. And I told the guy too, I was like, hey, do you feel good? Like, are you confident? Like you're good to go? He's like, yeah, I'm good. He's like, let me know if that changes for you. He's like, I really don't care if where we end up tonight. We just got to be safe. And I was like, that's great to hear. So we considered it, but I think it's hard for us to check ourselves when we're both incentivized to do something to get there or whatever the incentivization is, if that makes sense.
I think it's important though that you're open and willing to have that like broach that subject,
Totally.
regardless of whoever it is on the flight deck. Like I think that's a very important thing to actually just bring up, because we don't know what the other person's thinking, right? And so the fact that you're like, hey, I really don't care where we end up. I just want to do this safe. That just opens the door to be like, you know what? Let's maybe rethink what we're doing here because, is this smart? And just, that's excellent CRM, just being able to be open about that.
Yeah, it's something as a FO I try to bring up just because I know that it's a skill I'm trying to develop with being really open
Hmm.
and not just take their orders, I guess, as a captain. And I think it's because I feel like I'm getting closer to wanting to upgrade at some point in the future, being like, I want to be a part of that decision making process as well, and not necessarily have a more of a voice, but to be able to look at it from my lens and say, do I think this is safe or anything like that, and not just say yes. And to be honest, you should be doing that the moment you get to the airlines.
Hmm.
Like, let's be real, like, you don't have the experience to build off of that. So I think being able to use those skills, and Tom, I actually had to call out fatigue like 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, going to Newark after I got done with the red eye that got done super late too. And I remember I was like, I'm just going to take an energy drink and get through it. But it was already delayed 3 hours because of an edict going up to Newark.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have got home until 3 a.m. I would have been up for a long time.
Oh,
And I thought about our podcast and I'm like, no, like I'm not going to do
just don't do
this.
it. Yeah. Not worth
Yeah,
it.
just don't do it. And so ended up calling out like 4 hours beforehand, and I'm super glad I did because it was by far the safest thing. And I was almost asleep by the time we recorded the podcast. Like, right, no, this was right after we recorded the podcast for this, and I went to bed like an hour later, and I was like,
Wow.
yep, yeah. So
Yeah.
I fell asleep at like 7 p.m. that night, something like that. It was so, yeah. So,
Dang. Well, good on you for
anyways,
making that
that is my
call.
experience.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Scott, what do you think you're going to do? You're going to stay in Denver, or are you going to be back to Vegas?
Man, I'm on the fence. Vegas
I
has
know
a
it's a
lot.
lot of money to go
Yeah.
back.
Well, Vegas has the better West Coast flying, but the commute to Denver is so much easier.
Right.
And I'm trying to get into a position where I can drive to base. So for Vegas, I don't want to. Number one, I won't live in California. Number two,
Right.
Southern Utah is still deserty, and obviously Nevada is the desert. So it makes driving, being able to be drivable to base, it kind of eliminates the point of that. Because I won't live in Vegas again either. It's just too damn hot. Surface of the sun, man.
Yeah.
He's gonna come back to Alaska.
I know. Well, if we open an Anchorage base, Tom, I'll never give it up. And go fly the Saab, I guess, and live
Yeah,
in
you can go drive
Anchorage.
the
I could totally see you just say, screw this. I'm going to Alaska, grow beard out. And
I've
just
actually thought about it, but I'm like, man, I
pull the
don't want to give up
ripcord.
flying the bus. It's so nice.
It's, yeah. Tom, you got anything you want to talk about? Anything interesting happen as of late up there in Alaska for you? Just the weather and
Just
everything going on there?
I wish I was flying a bit more at the moment. Yeah, just the weather right now is just kind of getting a bit entertaining. I had a trip out to just a day turn out to Dillingham, which is out there in western Alaska, right kind of at the head of Bristol Bay. And, it was right when this big low pressure system was coming in, and I was looking at the TAF, and it was a direct crosswind. Our limit for sixes and a full width runway is 31 knots, but we were kind of knocked down to, or excuse me, 38 knots. Anything less than that is 31 for like a wet runway.
Okay.
And it was forecast to be 30 gusting 40
Wow.
directly across. And I'm looking at this and like, oh man, like what you just kind of playing it through your head, what decisions do you have to make? Is this going to work? Thankfully, the weather wasn't as bad when the forecast had changed a bit, but it was still a direct crosswind. It was a healthy crosswind, and just one of those situations where it's a short runway, lots of wind, low
What's the length?
ceilings. 6,400 feet.
It's pretty short.
Yeah.
That's really short.
And it's just one of those, yeah, kind of brings me back to what Spencer was talking about a bit, is knowing your energy state and energy management. And it was one of those situations where we had stall prot speeds,
I'm aware of
the
them.
beloved stall prot speeds.
Even when you go through a single layer,
Yeah,
and you'll just have ice speeds
yeah,
for the whole flight,
the whole flight,
flying into Phoenix.
and it's
It makes
terrible.
no sense.
Yeah,
And
Phenom had that
you're
too.
carrying so much extra energy for no reason, and trying to make your landings within the touchdown zone, because we also have, well, as we all do, LTP, but our LTP is a very small band once you get into those shorter runways like that. And yeah, at that point, it's kind of the really knowing your aircraft and knowing where it's at in its energy state, and remembering that it takes some time for those engines to spool up, even when you're sitting there pulling it out and sucking it back. And it's fun, but it's a little challenging all at the same time.
How do the new FOs do out there? Because I feel like it would be challenging to get signed off if that's the conditions you guys got to deal with.
They, for the most part, a lot of them are from here, and sort of flown in conditions like this.
Okay.
And the more time that they spend here, they increase their threshold for what they're willing to or what they're able to do. But I also feel like our pilot group is very good about like fostering that and
Yeah.
allowing first officers to have these diverse experiences. So it's tough. Just the way that my company does their first officers, it's oftentimes there's a flow program from like that's one of like a academy or something similar to that.
Okay.
But thankfully, recently they've done where they have prior qualifying time people, so
Sure.
specifically meant for a captain upgrade, but they have enough time to qualify for it, so they have a bit more of a diverse experience, and not just your flight instructor that's been sitting there for 1,500 hours. But yeah, long story short, to answer your question, most of them are quite good up here. So
That's
it
brings
fantastic.
actually
Yeah.
it helps me out a lot.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Let's go around the horn. Start with Tom. What's the most challenging airport you fly into in Alaska, or for your job?
The one for my right now, or the one I've flown
Yeah,
into?
yeah. No. Well, give me both.
The most challenging I've flown into in my entire Alaska experience, either have to say Dutch Harbor or Sandpoint.
Oh, okay.
I also don't want to take away from Kodiak, because Kodiak is, I actually probably, I take that back. Dutch Harbor and Kodiak
Yeah,
would be
those are
my top
challenging
two.
airports. What about in the current aircraft? Do you fly into both? You don't fly into those, do you?
No, we don't. I think when they were here before, they were flying into Kodiak, but that's since gone away. But in the E-Jet, man, that's a good question. Maybe Kotzebue.
Yeah.
What's challenging about that one?
Kotzebue, I think the challenging part there is when you're approaching it from the east, landing to the west. There's a big like a bluff that you have to
Gotcha.
not hit, and your approach profile from the final approach point down to the runways isn't 3 degrees, it's like 3.7, and so you're having to manage that, not exceed 1,000 feet per minute. So it's
That's super tough.
super tough. There's a lagoon on both sides. So there's a lot of bird traffic that kind of goes across it, as well as like on the ocean side, like seals will kind of come up onto the road, not onto the runway, but it's just all these other factors
Right there, though.
that are happening at that little airport. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
there's
there's a good look
Kotzebue.
at
People
Kotzebue.
listening, there's a picture of Kotzebue.
Yeah,
Yeah, I got it right here.
and it's just a very unprotected place. So yeah, the
Wind
east-west
can run
runways,
rampant there, huh?
yeah, is the runway that we were landing on.
Okay. Yeah, I could just imagine the amount of wind coming off the ocean or the
Mhm.
lake right there.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah,
probably intense.
it gets pretty wild out there. I mean, it's in the winter months, so the sea ice comes all the way up to the shoreline, and it's just white, absolutely white. And as the spring months come along, you can see like the sea ice start to pull off, and the water start to make itself known. It's just a very dynamic place out there.
Do these outstations in Alaska have a lot of Cat 3B or Cat 3 approaches?
No,
Really?
no, a
Okay.
lot of them we're using RNAVs, RNPs.
The LPVs?
We
RMPs,
can't, yeah,
okay.
can't go to LPV mins,
Okay.
so our RNPs are kind of king for us when it comes to places
Gotcha.
like that. We have very few places that, as far as we're taking the jet, like Fairbanks, Anchorage, where we do have like Cat 3 capability,
Okay.
which
And you
is,
guys do Cat 3s, correct, in the E-Jet?
yeah, we do. We have the ability to do Cat 3 auto land.
Yeah, see, at the other operator I was at, we only went to Cat 2 because what we were told was the operator you're at, you guys utilize it so much more because you're up there in Alaska that it pays for itself to be able to do that.
It does.
Versus for us, there's not many times we actually need a Cat 3 approach, and they can run it back and do it again. But Cat 2 is much more challenging, I think, than a Cat 3 approach.
I would agree.
The reason why I say that is a Cat 2 approach. I was going into Eugene one day, and it was a super low fog layer. Like it was maybe 100 feet, and it was just pure fog, but it was nothing else. So we go in, and it's like you hear 100, and you're still above the cloud, and you're like, "What the heck?" Super weird. And you have to kick it off. I can't remember what the Tom. Maybe you can help me out. Like with the Cat 2 approach, you have to hit the autopilot off at like 50 feet. Is it like 25 feet?
Yeah. So yeah, you can use you can be coupled all the way to 50 feet.
Yeah, that's what it is. 50
Yeah.
feet then. So you're seeing the runway lights, hit the autopilot off, and you're on the ground basically.
Yeah.
So versus just having the airplane do it itself is so much easier. And I've done that a couple of times into Atlanta where it was below like 1,000 RVR where you could not see a thing. So I'm, for the FO, we don't do them. We're heads down. So by the time I'm reading our FMAs, or basically the screen with all the different stuff on it,
Mhm.
we're like wheels on the ground. And I was just like, wow, that's pretty cool. But yeah, Cat 2s are not my favorite. So I bet in Alaska, the RMPs do work pretty well.
Yeah.
And they don't have the system outages nearly as much as the ILS approaches.
Yeah. Some places aren't even equipped with ILSs, or
Yeah.
you're stuck to
It's expensive, probably.
Yeah, or an older RNP, or not excuse me, RNP, but RNAV, where we're only stuck to like LNAV mins, which isn't super great.
Yeah, it's all overlays.
Yeah. But no, the RMPs are great. The ability to do Cat 3 auto land, especially in Anchorage when in those winter months where it's like dead calm, clear, and then the tide comes in, and you just get that advection fog that just sits over
It's
the
like
approach
Fairbanks,
end.
dude.
Exactly.
It just sits.
It just sits. I remember multiple times in the 1900 where we're just kind of sitting there orbiting. It's clear in a million, but just right over the airport is just fog. And the tower's like, well, what do you need? Oh, we need 1,800 RVR, and so they'll stick us behind a heavy.
See if it can blow it away for a second.
The heavy will blow it away for a second, just enough.
That's awesome.
That is actually hilarious.
And you look at your first officer, and you're like, "You ready for this?" And you just drive it on in there.
Does it work?
It does.
Wow.
Okay,
It does.
that's cool.
Surprisingly, it works enough to be able to do it. And they also really do help you out. The whole look-see, you cross that final approach fix, you're cleared to land, and then they'll give you an RVR report. What was 1,800 legally to shoot? Then all of a sudden it's like 1,200 or 1,000, and
Once you get on the ground, right?
yeah, and you're just
What do
like,
you guys need?
yeah,
Yeah, what do you guys need?
Sun Valley.
yeah.
Spencer, what about you? What are
Spencer,
some
tell us.
places
Yeah.
that are challenging for you in your current airframe? Where do you guys go that's challenging for you?
Probably one of our more challenging airports is going to be West Bend, Wisconsin.
Really?
Okay.
Did not see that coming.
Yeah, it's the reason it's challenging is it's a very small uncontrolled airport. It's about 4,300 feet long. So, and we operate in and out of there pretty frequently.
In a Hawker. Wow.
Occasionally, you'll get the passenger. It's like, well, I want to go to Scottsdale out of West Bend, and I'm like,
That's not going to work.
Dang.
I don't know if we're going to be able to do that. Yeah, like you got to be really close to, or pay real close attention to all your numbers, and like when you cross that threshold, you have to be at ref. You can't have like ref plus 1 or 2. It's just you need
Right.
it to be right on ref so that you actually meet all your performance numbers. But there's a couple other like little small airports that I would say are kind of challenging. Like, I mean, people always say Aspen's hard. That one's not bad. I've never really had any troubles getting in there. I mean, as long as the weather's nice. That's about it.
Have you flown an approach to minimums in ice into Aspen?
We are not allowed to do an approach.
You're not.
Are you just VFR
wow.
into there?
There's a lot of operators that can't shoot the approach there.
Dang.
And there's a reason why. I'll pull it
Scott,
up.
what's that reason?
I'll pull the plate
Yeah.
up. Go ahead and keep talking, Spencer.
But like Heber is an interesting one when I flew in there that first. That one's
That's a good airport.
interesting.
Where is it?
Heber City, Utah. It's just over the hills from
Heber
Salt
City,
Lake.
Utah.
It's a high altitude airport.
And then there's another small airport. It's in between Thermal and Palm Springs.
Bermuda Dunes?
I didn't know there was an airport.
Yeah, that place.
Dude, Bermuda Dunes is a challenge and a half. Wow.
What's so difficult about that one?
It's tiny.
It's very narrow and it's short. I mean, you have that perfect, like, that was like kind of like not planned to happen, but there's a highway right next to it.
It sits
And
right
it's
on
like,
I-10.
yeah, like there's not much room between that and the runway. And two, like you got to pay real close attention to your wingspan while you're taxiing on the taxiway, because there's a note of that says like, oh, you have 56 feet on this taxiway.
Wow.
Pixelated.
That's Bermuda Dunes.
It's 5,000 feet long.
Wow.
It's I don't know how narrow it is. It's 70 feet wide. Yeah.
Yeesh.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've actually never
So
landed
is this just
there.
based on?
Yeah, we always went to Thermal.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's the purpose? Just getting people as close as possible where do they need to go, versus going to Thermal.
Save them the 10-minute
as
Uber.
yeah. I was gonna say, as an operator, like Thermal, Palm Springs are so close. It looks like from the air, but maybe it's actually an hour away in the car. But
Well,
I've never seen that one going into Palm Springs before, and I've done quite a few flights into there.
here's a funny thing about because we'll occasionally have someone that requests that we go to Thermal from Palm Springs for a repo leg. One of the times I had to do it, I call up clearance and they're like, "Well, you're not going to believe this, but we have a flow going into Thermal right now."
Yep.
I'm like, why do you guys have a flow going on? Like,
Coachella.
yeah.
Wow.
Is it a towered airport, Thermal?
Nope.
Interesting.
That's funny.
So I bet it doesn't take much for
And
a
a
flow
lot
to
of guys,
happen.
a lot of guys like to fly against traffic going in there in jets.
Wow.
Yeah, they're like, oh, we're coming the opposite direction. Make a hole for us. That's their attitude. It's a
That's crazy.
challenging airport.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Scott, how about you? What's the hardest one in the bus that you've done lately?
In the bus? That's a real good
Chicago.
question. Midway.
I have a hot take on it.
Midway, a lot of guys find Midway a challenge because it's short. I don't mind that because I'm so used to flying into short airports. In the bus, what's the most challenging airport we fly into? That's a good question.
I got one for you.
Yeah, go ahead with
It's
yours.
kind of a hot take. So obviously we do flights into Trenton and Midway and Bank, San Diego. Those ones are fine. Like
San Diego's pretty
obviously
easy.
those are challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think for a day-to-day operation, because most of them are just regular, Class B airports, not that big of a deal. But I think the one that can give trouble the most that I wasn't expecting is Las Vegas, actually.
Interesting.
Harry Reid.
Why is that?
Yeah, and the reason why I say that is, especially in the summertime, the wind kind of swirls inside the valley. So you can get super weird wind patterns going in and out of there, and then massive thermals.
Oh.
Because, you have desert, and then you have just these huge, the strip is right off of it, and you have all these different kind of things going on. So I think that there's actually quite a bit of, I'm going to say, just if you're not careful, it can bite you close range to the runway. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I look at all the other ones. Yeah, they can happen, but like Vegas, because I never operated there in the regionals really. So the first time we went in there, not the first time, but as I was based there for 6 months, I started to notice like you got to be really on top of it, because if you aren't, you're going to be unstable, whether you have a sink rate or something like that, if you're not careful with how the wind is changing and being on top of that. So I'm not saying it's like incredibly difficult compared to you guys' examples, but we don't fly to that many challenging airports as is.
It's true. That's why I'm having trouble.
For a Class B one, I think about all the other ones. I'm like, okay, Dallas, Chicago, Minneapolis. I'm like, these aren't anything special. They're just higher winds depending on the day and all that. But Vegas, for 6 months of the year, is pretty unpredictable in that sense. So that's my answer, because everything else is pretty easy.
I would have to say, in my head thinking about it, the two challenging, and it varies based off of, because we're flying a big airplane into Bravos, right? Rarely do we go into smaller airfields. I would say for me, the two most challenging, not because they're hard to fly, but just because of the airports, would be LaGuardia and San Francisco.
Yeah. LaGuardia on runway 23 or whatever it is on the RMP that we do.
Yeah.
That one is pretty challenging.
You know, in LaGuardia, the winds are usually just rocking. They're terrible. Low level wind shear all the time.
Right.
You know, your number 27 in line to take off. You know, it's
Yep.
yeah. I mean, and watching
brutal.
those controllers are so impressive on the ground. The way they move those airplanes and find holes and sequence them. It's challenging because they're squeezing you, you know, around JFK, in between Newark, below Boston. You know, you're in this real tight spot. The approaches are tight and no margins for error, and it's always windy. That's in the short runways. That's a tough one. San Francisco, it just has to do with flow and congestion. It's actually easier, in my opinion, to fly in San Francisco when it's minimums, because then everyone's just shooting the approach.
Yeah,
you know. But when you're
dumping
VFR,
you in.
oh man, they like to stagger you. I've, you know, just like John was saying, I've had to go around early, catching wake off some guy in front of me on the parallel because you're so tight.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I know one of the regionals I had a buddy who flew there, and they had a procedure that if they were doing a parallel approach, they had to turn their TCAS from TARA straight to TA, just so they didn't get the false go-arounds, because they had so many of them, because that aircraft he was on had a little more sensitive TCAS, which we can't do in our airplane. So, you know, that happens. It doesn't happen as much. They finally updated the approaches where they stagger them, even for the visual approaches, prevent it offset a lot of that. But yeah, those would probably be the two most challenging. You got the crossing runways at both airports.
How about Reno?
I haven't flown the bus into Reno yet. I used to fly in there a lot in the private stuff. Yeah, Reno would probably be a challenge, especially in the summer, going in the bus. Right. You got weather. I did bid a trip that has a Reno turn in it, so we'll see next month, see if I get it.
Nice. Well, you got to update us.
Yeah, I'll let you know. Send you some pics. But I've had a fortunate career flying different places. The three most challenging airports I've flown into outside of airline would have to be St. Bart's, Anactivik Pass, Alaska, and Aspen. And believe it or not, you know, I mean, Tom knows what Anactivik Pass is. It's right on the north coast of Alaska, right before the final range, before you hit the tundra slope. And man, shooting that approach in there is tight. Even a visual in and out of there when it's busy is crazy. I'll throw some pictures up.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I've got some good pics I'll throw them up in the edit. You know, have you guys know what St. Bart's is?
Yep.
Yeah, so yeah, this is the famous St. Bart's approach everyone's used to. And it's a 2,200 foot runway downslope. You have to come in over this hill, the notch they call it. You have to use those windsocks behind that Twin Otter to determine if you can even do it. Because they start swirling on you. And then you're trying to ride the notch. So the idea is to stay 5 feet above the notch all the way down, which is pretty hard. You end up usually 15, 20 feet above it. Up in front of this PC-12's wing here is the checkerboard. If your mains are not down by the checkerboard, you're going to be in the water. So you have to go around.
Holy smokes.
Wow.
Because you've got basically, you're down to like 1,200 feet remaining when at the checkerboards. So everyone's seen the video of the guy in the little airplane that tried to do that, and he ended up going to the beach, and getting in the water. So yeah, it's a challenging airport, but you know, I used to do it 3-4 times a day when I was flying down in the Caribbean.
Dude, that is so cool.
Yeah, coming in over the water is actually a more impressive. The go around's really impressive. So you have to come in, and there's this hotel right here, and if you're not stabilized, the hotel's the final decision. If you get to the hotel and you're coming, it's like you're in a turn as you approach over and if you're abeam the hotel, I can't remember the name of it right now, but if you're abeam the hotel and you're not stabilized, you have to turn basically 60 or 70 degrees to the right and pull back as hard as you can, and you're 100 feet off the water. And
oh my God,
it's like all you see is water and rock. You know, if you don't If you're past the hotel and you try to make that turn, you're running into the mountain. If you're past the hotel and unstable, you don't have the performance to outclimb the notch on this other side. So you're kind
Who
of
designed this
screwed.
airport? Is this
The
really the
French.
best place to put an airport?
The
French.
It's a French airport.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
That's funny.
Aspen, though, Aspen's more challenging.
Okay.
So this is Aspen in the winter. Spencer, I'm sure, has seen this. This is a beautiful, good day going into Aspen. Normally not like that. This is what Aspen looks like with some weather over the field. This is the minimums going into Aspen, actually, because
Okay.
and you come over this hill right here, which is pretty tall. This is the other direction. So the VOR is right here, and you ride down the hill here, and then your miss is a circle in the valley here to come out, back out this hole over here to go down to rifle. All right, so here's the plate. So you got
There's a government charts, bro.
it's
Not
a
jet.
government chart, even better. Great. So
Yeah.
so that hill's 11.5. And then there's a 13.
That is so tall.
The VOR, no, sorry, the hill's 13.4. That's where the VOR is at. One of the VORs. And then that's where your red table is. And so you're coming over the hill, no, the 11.5 hill, that's right. And you ride it down, and so it's a low DME. And so then if you look down here, it's it's almost 7-degree glide.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's super steep. The missed approach point in a jet is either 10,000 or no, well, it's 10,200 give or take if you're in a Cat C. SkyWest has some lower approaches they can get in on, but I wouldn't want to do it. That'd be crazy.
Sure.
Yeah. So basically, the way it is the missed approach is basically right here over the top of this hill. So that's where you break out at minimums to see it, and then it's a dive and drive.
Wow.
So it's just chop and drop straight down to the runway. It's a challenging approach, man. I would say it's probably approach-wise, it's the most challenging airport I've flown into. And if you're covered in ice, your N1s are high because you got your anti-ice on. You're gonna have too much energy. You're not gonna make that glide. I want to say, and I could be wrong, someone could correct me in the comments, but I believe at minimums to make the glide to the runway is 10 degrees.
Oh.
Yeah, like you're basically doing S turns to get to the runway.
Wow.
It's the most challenging airport I've flown into, just because, like Spencer said, on a good day, everything's VFR and you're just fighting everybody else going in there. But on a good day, it's fine. It's actually, it's a pretty airport. But if you have to shoot an approach to minimums,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's brutal. I mean, I guess St. Bart's doesn't have an approach, so never had to worry about that. But yeah, a lot of different fun stuff.
Well, when you're going into Aspen on a bad weather day, now you got to fight everyone else going into Rifle or Eagle.
That's right.
Do those fill up pretty quick?
Oh, yeah.
With just traffic going in if Aspen isn't for the alternate? Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, rifles. Everyone will try to get to Eagle. But usually if the weather's bad in Aspen, the weather's bad in Eagle. Rifles down in the valleys.
Hand in hand.
Yeah, I've diverted. There was one time when I was flying the King Air 350. We were going from Seattle to Aspen, and we were holding over Red Table. We were number 12 in the stack. We were up at 280, I think. And we held for almost 2.5 hours and then diverted to Rifle because the
Wow.
passenger was like, I'd like you to try to get in there. We're like, all right, we'll sit here and spin circles till we run out of gas and have to go to Rifle. And that's what happened. And it was funny because the passenger ended up having to take we had a car waiting for the passenger, but had we just diverted initially, she would have been in Aspen before we landed in Rifle.
So funny.
That's just how they are.
Sometimes they just got to learn
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
hard
you know.
way. So
Hey, they got that kind of money. All right, man. You pay me to burn holes in the sky. That's fine with me. I was trying to build time.
that's funny, man.
Yeah. So have you been into any other challenging airports not in the bus, John?
We did a couple in South America in the E-Jet that were interesting.
Nice.
Shorter and in the mountains too. So I don't know the names of those. I'd have to look. But the radar coverage down there is not nearly as good as in America. So you're kind of on your own, and a lot more sketchy clearances. Just saying, I can't even remember what they gave us, but they just forget about you. So it was definitely a learning experience when first going down there. Other than that, I don't know, man. Like, I don't have these crazy stories like you guys do about this. To me, it's cowboy flying, but it's really, I mean, other than that, I'm trying to think. I've done Steamboat before, but that's pretty easy. But Steamboat is weird because there's no tower, but there's like this operations guy who sits out there and tries to act like he's the FAA directing traffic in and out. And he'll get all pissed off at you if you don't answer him the correct way. And I'm like, who are you, bro?
Yeah, that's
yeah.
Catalina Island.
I don't know.
Is like that.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, they have a guy who sits in the tower and wants to be the controller, but it's a non-controlled airport.
It's just so stupid.
And they're just out there anyways. Oh my god.
Yeah, he's like an airport ops guy, like
trying to direct people in and out.
Yeah,
it's so stupid.
Funny.
Yeah. So I mean, stuff like that. But Missoula, we fly in the bus. I want to go up there again. Missoula is one of my favorite airports to go up into. There's an RMP approach that takes you through the mountains. So other than that, I don't think so, man. I'm pretty boring. Like I said, don't have that many crazy experiences. Probably won't in the bus, unfortunately.
No,
unless we start going to South America.
That is a good thing.
Do not want crazy. Crazy experiences lead to ASAPs, which leads to carpet dances.
Yeah, true. I might bid Bogota when that comes out. I know we're gonna start flying down
that's
there.
Cool.
It's on the no. There's another one.
Is it on the schedule?
No, there's one in Denver. I bid next month. That's on the schedule. It's somewhere down there though. It's a turn. It's a red eye turn, but I bid it just because it'd be cool to put in the logbook. Yeah. It's way down there.
I think there's a new one out of Atlanta. That's to SAP. I think that's in El Salvador. I think.
Nice.
Something Honduras. That's where it is. Honduras.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So I've been to a couple cool places, but nothing crazy. I'm sure the people listening are bored by the Vegas is my hardest airport. They're probably laughing at me, but I don't know, man. I mean, how many other airports in America are that challenging outside of, we got Tom up here in, Alaska and Spencer flying on 4,000 foot runways. So
I'm impressed that the Hawker can do that, dude.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, dude. I don't know how I'm supposed to compete within the Airbus. When we're going to, Denver or something like that. Denver can be a hard airport, though. I will say that. So.
Yeah, Denver can be very challenging.
Those were my experiences. Yeah, it just depends on the day.
Yeah, cool. we covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, we did.
Can you guys believe it's been an hour and 42 minutes already? It's not kind of crazy.
It went by like that. Well, cool. Right on. Well, thanks for coming back on, Tom, and thanks for coming in, Spencer. Appreciate it. Yeah, good to have you guys on. Everybody listening, check us out. We're on you're watching it, but we're on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. You can email us, autopilotonpodcast@gmail.com. Website's autopiloton.com. We do have X and Instagram, so we're putting stuff up on there.
Slowly building up.
Yeah, building up. We're getting some shorts on YouTube. Yep. John's working good on that stuff. If anybody wants to come on or has comments or wants to chat with us, feel free to email or direct message us. We're looking for ideas, and would love, if you're interested and want to be on, great. Again, I'm going to see anybody who's a controller out there who wants to come on. We'll one of these days I'll get one of you. I reached out to NATCA, haven't heard back from them, unfortunately. So anybody from NATCA listening,
won't hear back
I'm looking
from
for
them.
you. Call them out. Other than that, thanks again, everybody, and we'll catch you on the next one.